Ever since I was a little kid, I've wanted to find buried treasure, so I've come here. York, a city that claims to be a crown jewel of archaeology. Sure, there's this big, old-looking structure. Built in the 15th century, the minster looms large over the city. It has also been looted, vandalized, and set on fire numerous times, resulting in major renovation efforts. And though the building might look old, some of it is much more recent. Then you have the shambles. The iconic bowed buildings and cobbled streets look straight out of a medieval town, and even inspired a certain alley in a certain fantasy series written by a certain someone who shall not be named. However, instead of blacksmiths and smelters, you have tourist traps and whatever this is. So, where is the archaeology? To find out, I went to an expert.
York is an absolute time capsule of the last 2,000 years. There's exceptional archaeological remains and evidence and standing remains around us. There's really nowhere quite like it. When you're walking through York, make sure to look up, because there's so much wonderful history and architecture that you can see in the upper halves of buildings that are at that sort of floor level. It's just shop fronts and things, but when you look up, you can see clues to the past all around you. And walk the city walls, where you can see loads of archaeology and loads of architecture that will be relevant.
Inspired by this discussion, I decided to take a walk along York's Roman walls. Shit. While on the walls, I spotted something that caught my eye. This is the Micklegate excavation, run by the York Archaeological Trust. They're digging this site to make sure nothing of historical importance is disturbed before major construction occurs. I figured this might be a good place to find some treasure, but first, I needed the necessary credentials. I turned to a trusted source for advice. Things were not looking great. I also learned that even if I did find treasure, I might not be able to keep it.
Anything that's legally classed as treasure that's found either by an archaeological unit or by a member of the public has to be reported. Would you like me to give the legal definition of treasure?
Yeah.
So, it's complicated. Treasure legally is any object that's over 300 years old and made of more than 10% more than one prehistoric metal object. And then there's a few found together. Any prehistoric, any amount of prehistoric precious metal that is considered to be treasure is also considered to be.
This was a disaster. I couldn't be an archaeologist by next week. I wasn't allowed to dig. And even if I did find any treasure, I couldn't keep it. What was the point of all this then? Dejected, I headed back into town, where I ran into something unexpected. The annual Jorvik Viking Festival. Every year, thousands of visitors flock to the city to take part in living, breathing archaeology. In the Viking encampment, craftsmen make jewelry, pots, and trinkets using tools and techniques they believe are authentic to the time period. Jim is an experimental archaeologist who uses written records, art, and artifacts to try and string together pieces of the past to weave a rich, but not complete, fabric of history that he brings to life every year in his tent at the festival. But at the end of the day, these are just his best guesses based on his research. The truth is, we can never be certain. And it was here that I discovered that the questions we don't have answers to are sometimes what keep the magic alive.
Would you like to see something sharp? Would you like to see something choppy?
Back in the museum, Emily had something to show me.
It's a mystery object. We have theories about what it might be. There's more question marks than known facts about this object. So one of the challenges with mystery objects in museums is that a lot of the time they go unused because we don't know what they are, and so it's very hard to interpret them and share them with members of the public. But what's lovely about this object, I think, because there are so many clues, is that we have been able to use this quite a lot. People who are drawn to archaeology in particular really love that idea of finding clues and finding out new information, new insights that have been lost to us before. Sometimes visitors can be quite uncomfortable with uncertainty, which is interesting because we're trying to embrace uncertainty. The questions that don't have answers stick with people a little bit more.
This mystery object is a symbol of human curiosity, our unending thirst for knowledge. Seeing the wonder on the faces of visitors, the children's excitement when caught in a brutal sword fight, I realized that archaeology goes beyond just treasure. It's a reflection of who we are as people, the obstacles our species have overcome, the legacies we leave behind, using this knowledge to forge paths for generations ahead. So, where's the archaeology? I guess it's all around us. I still really don't want treasure though.